China has the largest fleet of ocean-going fishing vessels that cover the globe, as far away as South America on the other side of the world. And in 2018, China caught 18 million tons of seafood, 4 times as much as the fishing nations of Peru and Ecuador combined. China's trawling destroys seabeds in its path, and surprisingly, they are even armed and military trained. Are they allowed to go over the sea and fish in somebody else's waters? Quite the opposite. China has been frequently conducting illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing activities in all oceans. In June this year, 340 Chinese fishing boats arrived in international waters to catch giant squid off the Galapagos Islands, one of the world's most biodiverse regions. The fleet has now moved south to operate in waters off Peru. The Associated Press reported earlier that it has become one of the largest fleets in recent years off the Pacific coast of South America. Peru and Ecuador rely heavily on seafood for their economy and trade. According to World Bank data, in 2018, the two countries caught 4.5 million tons of fish, only 25% of China's marine catch. In 2017, a Chinese trawler was captured in the Galapagos Marine Reserve, carrying an astounding 300 tons of catches. Oceana, an organization that tracks fishing activities, also reported that Chinese fishing vessels account for 99% of the fishing activity around the protected areas. Southeast Asia is even more severely affected by Chinese fishing, especially in the South China Sea, where China has also taken advantage to expand its dominance over the region.
西沙群岛、南沙群岛是中国固有领土。我想强调，不管任何国家以任何形式妄图否定中国在南海的主权和权益，强化其非法主张，都是无效的，注定不会得逞。
In April, the New York Times reported that Chinese fishing fleets in Southeast Asia are protected by armed Coast Guard vessels, which use metal trawlers to fish along the seabed, catching everything in their path. The Chinese Coast Guard has even attacked and seized fishing vessels of other countries in the South China Sea where there was a territorial dispute, and confiscated their catch and equipment. Local fishermen say angrily to the media that, "I don't understand why our government doesn't protect us." China's actions have become more and more rampant in recent years, threatening not only the sovereignty of coastal countries, but also global food security and marine ecology. But why are these countries not taking action? This is because these Chinese fishing fleets are in fact armed militia. According to Chinese official media reports, titled, "Why Japan Should Be Afraid of China's Navy," they say China has 200,000 fishing vessels, including 17,000 well-equipped ocean-going vessels, the largest in the world in terms of number and gross tonnage, and employs 14 million people, or 25% of the world's fishermen. The Chinese Navy and Coast Guard are responsible for their military training and political education, and the government also provides substantial subsidies. Fishing vessels are equipped with advanced electronic equipment, including communication systems and radars, which can interact with the Chinese Coast Guard and the Navy. At least 50,000 vessels are also equipped with satellite navigation, which can monitor and transmit their position and collect and report marine intelligence. They also provide logistical support to Chinese naval vessels, such as the Militia vessels that delivered ammunition and fuel to 2 naval ships docked near Zhejiang province in May of 2008. These fishing vessels are the equivalent of militias. This is by China's own admission. Reuters reports that it is common practice for Chinese shipbuilders to reserve military application platforms on civilian vessels for use by naval forces during wartime, allowing them to be transformed into military forces at any time. In fact, these fishermen are also being exploited by the Chinese government and their lives are being disregarded, but they are not aware of it.
China has had dozens of these militia boats surrounding the island every day. On a shot from December 20th, what you see is 95 Chinese boats, the heaviest day that we have monitored around this feature. Every one of them are large, none of them broadcasting the signals that they should be to avoid collisions, none of them with nets or other gear in the water, none of them fishing. They just sit there for long periods of time, monitoring and intimidating the Filipinos.
Meanwhile, China does not select its target countries randomly. If we look closer, we can see that most of these countries were once friendly with China and are highly dependent on China for their economies. Take Ecuador. In 2016, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Ecuador, and Chinese naval vessels have visited the port of Guadalquivir 3 times. In 2018, Ecuador signed the Belt and Road Initiative with China, and in less than 10 years, Chinese funds have entered Ecuador's energy, mining, infrastructure, finance, aviation, and telecommunications sectors, and even created a 240 million national surveillance network in 2019. In 2017, the United Nations agreed to impose sanctions on North Korea in a bid to force it to give up its nuclear weapons by banning its exports of squid, a major foreign trade product. But later it was found that the largest catch in the region belonged not to North Korea, but to China. In March, using several types of satellite-based luminescent remote sensing technology to observe squid populations, Global Fishery Watch and its collaborating researchers found Chinese fishing vessels using twin trawlers to catch squid indiscriminately. These vessels also squeeze North Korean fishermen out of their own waters, which is why North Korean ghost fishing vessels have been frequenting Japan's coasts in recent years. Meanwhile, the value of Chinese vessel squid catches in the area has exceeded $200 million a year since the sanctions came into effect. Even though Global Fish Watch submitted a specific report to the UN, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said it has always conscientiously implemented the UN Security Council resolution on North Korea, adding that it has always strictly punished illegal fishing. In addition, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam in Southeast Asia have been threatened by Chinese maritime militia, and their citizens have even been injured in clashes. However, these countries are China's biggest trading partners. They've also signed the Belt and Road Initiative agreement with China to introduce Chinese investments and owe a lot of debt to China. This is one of the reasons why China has no qualms about asserting its sovereignty over the South China Sea, which puts these countries in a very passive position. Jason Thomas, an Australian geopolitical risk expert, describes China's armed fishermen and maritime militia as fishermen mercenaries, and says, plundering the resources of other economies and swarming into territorial waters are acts of aggression disguised as civilian activities, and a cheaper alternative to conventional conflict for opponents of the US and its allies such as Australia. The future of conflict, as it always has been, will be based on the tactics of imaginative asymmetric warfare. CCP's use of fishing mercenaries is a good use of imagination. Daniel Ganez, Ecuador's naval operations commander, said on September 25th that, "This year's Chinese fleet is larger than in previous years, and we are at risk of extinction of some species." Now the U.S. Coast Guard also coordinated with the Ecuadorian Navy, sending ships to the region to patrol more than 3,000 miles of international and Ecuadorian waters to keep an eye on China's massive fishing fleet. In addition to the military threat, the damage to the ocean and the environment from Chinese fishing vessels is severe. Despite China's professed support for protecting the environment, the government heavily subsidizes the fuel that allows these vessels to trawl even further afield. A completely unsustainable, purely destructive method of fishing. China has been the world's largest producer of marine litter for more than 10 years, with a 27% increase in 2018. Yet Chinese President Xi Jinping claimed at the UN General Assembly on September 30th that China defends the environment and calls for global cooperation to protect the Earth's biodiversity.
Third, COVID-19 reminds us that humankind should launch a green revolution and move faster to create a green way of development and life, preserve the environment, and make Mother Earth a better place for all. Humankind can no longer afford to ignore the repeated warnings of nature and go down the beaten path of extracting resources without investing in conservation, pursuing development at the expense of protection, and exploiting resources without restoration. The Paris Agreement on Climate Change charts the course for the world to transition to green and low-carbon development. It outlines the minimum steps to be taken to protect the Earth, our shared homeland, and all countries must take decisive steps to honor this agreement.
In addition, every year China dumps millions and millions of tons of plastic and trash into the oceans, overfishes other countries' waters, destroys vast swaths of coral reef, and emits more toxic mercury into the atmosphere than any country anywhere in the world. China's carbon emissions are nearly twice what the U.S. has, and it's rising fast. By contrast, after I withdrew from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord, last year America reduced its carbon emissions by more than any country in the agreement. Those who attack America's exceptional environmental record while ignoring China's rampant pollution are not interested in the environment. They only want to punish America, and I will not stand for it.
As we can see from the case of the fishermen militia, there is a difference between what the Chinese Communist Party says and what it actually does. Everyone knows how important the ocean is, and when China is destroying the precious resource shared by all mankind on an unprecedented scale, no one should sit by and watch.